Coming up today, with just over 3 weeks until the general election, South Korea's ruling and main opposition parties start to finalise their candidate nominations. The newly formed minor opposition party officially forms its own negotiating bloc. In an apparent protest to the ongoing key resolve military drills between South Korea and the US, North Korea fires 2 medium-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea. Key resolve finishes today. South Korea's chief nuclear envoy jets off to China for talks on coordinating a tough response to North Korea's recent provocations. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday the 18th of March. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start with the latest on the countdown to Korea's general election. That will happen in the mid of April. A mere 46 days after the launch of the minor opposition People's Party, an application has been submitted to the National Assembly, officially enlisting the party as a parliamentary negotiation group. 2 more lawmakers joined the party this week, securing the required number of lawmakers to form this group. A negotiation group in the National Assembly can be formed after at least 20 lawmakers are secured. Now, Ahn Cheol-soo's party had been struggling to recruit enough incumbent lawmakers to gain the right to participate in the negotiations between the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition Minju Party of Korea. And by successfully forming the negotiating bloc, the party is now eligible to receive state subsidies of some $6.6 million. Now, in the meantime, the ruling party and the main opposition Minju Party of Korea continue on with their nomination process for candidates. The ruling Saenuri Party held a closed-door Supreme Council meeting this morning. The meeting was chaired by party leader Kim Moo-sung and convened to discuss progress of remaining candidate nominations, including with political heavyweight Yoo Seung-min, who was cast to the fringes of the party after clashing with President Park Geun-hye. The Minju Party of Korea also announced an additional 9 candidates for nomination earlier on this Friday. North Korea fired 2 mid-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea this morning. It comes just days after the US warned it would slap even tougher sanctions on the regime if it continued with its nuclear missile tests. We have our Kim Hyun-bin on the line from the Defense Ministry in Seoul. Hyun-bin, tell us more.
Well, Mark, as you mentioned, North Korea launched 2 ballistic missiles, and the first one was fired at 5:55 a.m. South Korea time at Sokcheon in the country's southwest. And the officials here say the missile, presumed to be a mid-range Nodong missile, flew 800 kilometers before falling into the East Sea. Now, the other one was fired 15 minutes later from the same location. Now, that one disappeared from radar at an altitude of 17 kilometers. Now, the South Korean military official says it most likely malfunctioned and blew up in midair. Now, South Korea Joint Chiefs of Staff said the missiles were fired from a transporter rocket launcher, also known as TEL. Now, North Korea's last test fired a Nodong missile in March 2014, and it has a range of up to 1,300 kilometers, putting Seoul and Tokyo within striking distance. Making matters more concerning, the missile's warhead can be loaded with biochemical substances.
Yeah, so it's not a missile to be taken lightly then. And Hyun-bin, North Korea rarely just launches these kinds of missiles spontaneously. What prompted the North to do this today?
Well, there's a good chance the launches were in protest against Seoul and Washington's annual joint military drills, Key Resolve and Full Eagle. Now, today is actually the final day of Key Resolve, a computer program war game exercise that aims to enhance interoperability between the 2 allies. Now, Full Eagle consists of numerous field training exercises, and that will run through the end of April. Now, Washington has already deployed one of its nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and nuclear submarine for the drills. Now, there's also word that the U.S. could deploy a B-2 stealth bomber and other key strategic weaponry to the peninsula before Full Eagle ends, as a symbol of the strength of the Seoul-Washington alliance. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Hyun-bin, for that report. Now, the top official in the US military has warned that North Korea's hostile activities involving nuclear, missile and cyber attacks pose risks to the United States and its allies. His remarks come as a new report shows the North is making headway in developing submarines capable of firing ballistic missiles. Park Jong-hong reports.
North Korea poses a multifaceted security threat. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, says North Korea's ballistic missile, nuclear developments, and the intent on conducting malicious cyber activities translate into risks to the United States and its allies. He made the remarks at a Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing in Washington. Dunford said the U.S. has a competitive military edge against the relatively low technology of the North Korean military. However, he added a conflict would result in a large number of casualties. In the event of a conflict on the peninsula, he said North Korea may be able to seize the initiative and rapidly escalate hostilities, utilizing special operations forces and long-range artillery. Also at the hearing, the Secretary of Defense singled out North Korea as one of the 5 challenges facing the U.S.
5 evolving strategic challenges, namely Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and terrorism, are now driving DoD's planning and budgeting as reflected in this budget.
Meanwhile, the North Korea monitoring website 38 North has published a report taking note of Pyongyang's progress in developing ballistic missile submarine. It said recent commercial satellite imagery of the Sinpo-Sao shipyard indicates North Korea is continuing to actively pursue the development of the Pukguksong-1 submarine-launched ballistic missile and the Kore-class experimental ballistic missile submarine. In particular, it said that unspecified work on the latter over the past 2 months may be complete. Assessing the movements from the image, it predicted construction of a bigger submarine will soon follow. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's top nuclear envoy has left for Beijing to meet with his Chinese counterpart. They're set to discuss response measures against North Korea's nuclear weapons program. And the meeting comes as the US announced unilateral sanctions on Pyongyang on Wednesday. Both China and Russia are deeply opposed to the measures. Connie Kim reports.
South Korea's Kim Hong-gyun, new special representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, will meet with his Chinese counterpart Woo Da-wei on Friday to discuss ways to change North Korea's attitude regarding its nuclear weapons program. Kim's comments come as North Korea fired 2 mid-range ballistic missiles in the early hours on Friday.
Seoul and Beijing will share assessments of North Korea's provocations and threats. Based on the 2 leaders' joint stance that Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program is unacceptable, discussions will focus on finding ways to change the North's thoughts and attitude through implementing UN sanctions.
The strongest set of UN sanctions to date were imposed on Pyongyang earlier this month. UN sanctions include mandatory cargo inspections and a ban on trade of coal and iron that require Beijing's cooperation to choke off funding for Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program. Kim is also expected to press for multilateral talks involving the US, China, Japan, and Russia, members of the 6-party talks. China recently said it's open to 3, 4, or 5-party nuclear talks to resolve the nuclear issue through dialogue. Kim's visit to Beijing comes after his Washington trip, where he met Sung Kim, the U.S. point man for 6-nation nuclear talks last week. The two saw eye to eye on sanctions as an effective way to pressure the regime to give up its nuclear weapons program. U.S. President Barack Obama issued an executive order imposing new sanctions on the North that includes secondary boycott measures that proposes penalties on banks and firms that aid the regime. China and Russia oppose the U.S.'s unilateral sanctions on North Korea, raising questions on whether the 2 countries will participate in implementing the U.S. sanctions on Pyongyang. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Japan has expanded the number of textbooks that falsely claim South Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo is Japanese territory. This, as a committee in Japan announced Friday, a review of public high school textbooks to be used beginning April 2017. According to it, out of 35 social studies textbooks, 27 refer to Dokdo as Takashima, the Japanese name for Dokdo, and say Korea is illegally occupying the island. That's about 77% and a sharp rise from the 54% of textbooks in 2013. Seoul's foreign ministry has sternly protested against the revision and is expected to summon an official from the Japanese embassy in Seoul later on this Friday. Seoul and Tokyo's landmark agreement on Japan's wartime sex slavery has not been included in the textbooks yet, as the revision process began before the deal was struck. Now, the pace of decline for Korea's producer prices slowed in February, remaining at the same level compared to the previous month. The Bank of Korea says the rise in prices of agricultural products led the slowdown. Prices of farm produce rose 3.7% last month from January. However, producer prices were down 3.4% last month from a year earlier. Producer prices have been sliding since July last year on the back of plunging global crude oil prices. But oil prices seem to be doing a turnaround. In fact, they hit their highest point this year on Thursday after major producers agreed to meet next month to discuss an output freeze. The price of West Texas Intermediate settled at $40.20 a barrel, up 4.5%. Brent crude futures finished up $1.21 at $41.53. Oil prices surged after key producers from within and outside OPEC decided to meet on April 17th in Qatar to discuss the first global supply deal potentially in 15 years. Now, the rise also comes amid rising crude exports and gasoline demand in the US, as well as a weaker dollar after the Federal Reserve's decision to freeze its benchmark rate on Wednesday. Korea's benchmark Kospi gained slightly today, around 4 points or 0.2% to 1992 as of 11:10 a.m. today, about an hour ago, on the back of the oil price recovery. Now, it turns out the dwarf planet Pluto is more strange and fascinating than we had ever really imagined. This is according to NASA scientists, who released a series of papers after analysing data collected from its space probe, New Horizons, revealing just how much more there is to explore of our solar system. Kwon Jang-oh with the details.
The big surprise is that Pluto turned out so surprising. That's what one of NASA's top researchers said about the once ninth planet. NASA released 5 new groundbreaking papers on the dwarf planet in Science magazine on Thursday, outlining the discoveries they made from the data sent by its space probe, New Horizons. When they sent the probe on its 3 billion-mile mission 9.5 years ago, NASA had no idea about the variety of terrain and geological activity on Pluto's surface. They discovered everything from flat plains to mountain ranges and underground oceans to ice volcanoes. There was even the discovery of a hazy blue atmosphere, faintly reminiscent of Earth. Not only Pluto, but fascinating discoveries were made about Pluto's moons as well. Charon, the largest, was seen to have a complex and intriguing terrain, and Pluto's 4 smaller moons were found to have unprecedented orbits and rotation, which NASA has yet to properly explain. But sadly, this could be the last time pictures like these of Pluto are seen for a very long time. Although data transmission continues, New Horizons has now left the dwarf planet behind and is on its way to the Kuiper Belt, with the chances of another close-up look at Pluto unlikely for at least another couple of decades. Kwon Jang-oh, Arirang News.
Fascinating stuff. Now, back here on Earth, the US President Barack Obama has privately told a group of Democratic donors that the party must back Hillary Clinton as the next Democratic candidate for the White House. The New York Times reported on Thursday that Obama, who had stayed neutral until now, also signaled that Clinton's rival, Senator Bernie Sanders, was nearing the end of his campaign. He noted that some Democrats did not view Clinton as authentic and played down the importance of authenticity. The president made the remarks at a fundraising event in Texas for the Democratic National Committee, and the comments were later confirmed by a White House official. Those who attended the event said Obama's tone was urgent, as it appears the Republican nominee will be Donald Trump. US Secretary of State John Kerry has officially declared that the Islamic State militant group is committing genocide against Christians and other religious minorities across the Middle East. The US Congress voted to make that designation. Kerry had until Thursday local time to agree or disagree to it. And speaking at a news conference at the State Department, Kerry said ISIS was and continues to be responsible for genocide against groups in areas under its control, including the Yazidis, Christians and Shiite Muslims. He added that without US intervention, those people would have been slaughtered in even bigger numbers. It's the first time the United States has declared a genocide since Darfur in 2004. Now, K-pop musicians are grabbing the spotlight at South by Southwest, which is one of the largest music festivals in the US and even the world. Kim Ji-yeon takes us there.
Who wouldn't want to dazzle a huge crowd with their musical talents? Some young Korean bands have seen their dreams come true at the 30th annual South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, one of the top 3 biggest music festivals in the world. K-pop fans don't mind waiting to see what they have to offer.
In high school, some girls showed it to me and I was like, I like this. I listen to other countries, their music.
The dancing. I really like the dancing a lot because me and my friends can get together and we can dance it as well and learn it.
A total of 7 teams handpicked by the music director of South by Southwest are performing this year. They come from various music backgrounds, including rock, heavy metal, dance, and R&B.
Favorite song of the night was My Mama. To work with them.
Yes, as soon as possible. They're amazing, so I definitely want to work on their next project.
Apart from Mamamoo and Zion T, the other Korean musicians aren't household names, even in Korea. For these rising stars, it's a great chance to stand out as producers and music industry bigwigs are among the audience, on the lookout for the next great hit.
It was such a great opportunity to share our music. I hope we can get some more publicity by showing our performances.
The Korea Creative Contents Agency hopes to bring more K-pop musicians to South by Southwest next year to promote Korea's alternative music culture to the world. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it on this Friday afternoon here in Seoul. We do hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we also hope that you stay tuned to Arirang TV. Until next time, goodbye.